Congratulations on completing the first week of your quest. This is time to review everything we have learned, and I'm going to use an example of how to disrupt healthcare based on the principles of everything we have learned so far. Remember the first episode, we talked about the scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. Now, let me apply that to starting this company that was set out to disrupt healthcare. In this particular thing, I realized that one of the scarcity mindset I had was I wanted to solve a small problem. That means I could have focused on simply looking at one disease like type 2 diabetes and felt really good about solving the problem. Instead, I applied the abundance mindset and saying, what if all of the chronic diseases really have a same root cause? What if we can solve the epidemic of chronic diseases? So mindset change was, rather than simply looking at one particular disease and solving that, I decided I'm going to look at all of these chronic diseases and see if it is possible to attack its underlying root cause of chronic diseases. The second episode, we focused on identifying this big problem. The big problem here was I realized that we as humanity have done a really good job of getting rid of infectious diseases. However, we have in turn created this massive epidemic of chronic diseases. We all know someone who is suffering from these chronic diseases, whether it's a depression or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or obesity or diabetes or autoimmune diseases or heart diseases, or worse yet, the cancers. Remember, these are all chronic lifestyle diseases. And the big problem really I identified here was, can we look at all of these chronic diseases as one big problem that can actually be solved using exponential technologies? As most of you know, I am not a physician and I'm not a scientist. To me, this was a problem of pure intellectual curiosity. That means I wanted to understand what is the reason, why do people have all these different diseases? So first thing I did was wanted to understand what is causing chronic diseases. So as I've told you in the previous episode, I spent 3 hours a day for 3 months going through thousands of scientific journals, trying to understand what causes people to be obese, why do we have type 2 diabetes, how do people get these heart diseases, do people get depression, is there a different reason, or could there be something similar? And it turns out because of this intellectual curiosity, I was able to identify that gut microbiome is a root cause or at least influential in many of these chronic diseases. And that's where my journey started, understanding that there is a microbiome. And that was a big deal because for me, I didn't know what microbiome was. And it turned out that we as humans, 99% of all the genes that are expressed in our human body are actually not our own. They don't come from a mom and dad. They actually come from these microbiome or microorganisms. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time telling you about everything that I have learned through this process, because this learning is what allows us to look at this problem very differently than almost every expert has looked at it. The next thing really was about asking the right question. And I think in one of the episodes I did talk about briefly about that when I realized the gut microbiome was the problem and there were tens of companies that were doing the microbiome testing, why was the problem not getting solved? And it turns out every one of them was asking the same wrong question. What organisms are in our gut? The right question was not about who is there. The right question to ask was what they were doing. And I think as we have gone on this journey, we have learned more that it's not just about the gut microbiome, it is also about the oral microbiome. That means the organisms that are in our mouth. Because as we eat food, our oral microbiome is modifying the food that we eat into different molecules, and when they go to the gut, they get modified again, and that's what the body gets. So understanding what's happening, digestive tract, we can actually find out what is going on with the food we eat and how it gets converted. And by the way, the same thing happens when we take a drug. Every time you take a drug, it gets modified by your gut microbiome into a completely different thing. And that's the reason the side effect of the drugs or the efficacy of the drug depends on how these microbiome changes the drug into something else. The next thing really was focused on was understanding the root cause. Understanding that the diseases that we talk about were really not the diseases themselves. They were simply the symptom of the imbalance of the gut microbiome. So symptom that you see is obesity. The symptom you see is high blood glucose, the diabetes. The symptom you may see maybe the rheumatoid arthritis, like autoimmune diseases, or it could be things like depression. They were simply the symptom, and the underlying root cause of these symptoms were imbalance in the gut microbiome. That means understanding then how do you balance the gut microbiome to have the functionality, and how do we discover what are the right foods for each one of us to eat, because we realized there was never going to be one right food for everyone. So that basically we now relearning what we knew thousands of years ago. When Hippocrates said 2,500 years ago, all diseases begin in the gut, right? One man's food is another man's poison. Let food be thy medicine, let thy medicine be the food. And really understanding now scientifically what are the right foods for each one of us and why, and what are the foods we must avoid and why. And just by understanding that the things that we saw, the diseases were simply the symptoms of the problem and the root cause was the imbalance, really allowed us to focus on solving the right problem. Once we started on this journey of creating Viome to understand the root cause and understanding what is causing the imbalance of the gut microbiome and how we can use the food as a medicine. So here's what happens. First thing I did was made a public commitment that I am going to focus the next decade of my life to solve the problem of the chronic diseases. What that did was it allowed me to assemble the team. The person who was working at the Los Alamos National Lab had the technology to be able to understand what these microbes are doing by using the technology called RNA sequencing. That means what is the genes are being expressed, not what the genes are. And that was the big breakthrough, because every single company so far has been focused on understanding the DNA or understanding what the genes are there. And we realize it is not the genes, but the gene expression that causes people to have diseases. When I made a public commitment, I'm going to solve the problem, the person who was working at the Los Alamos National Lab with the technology actually reached out to say, hey, what if we can apply the technology that I'm working on to help you solve that problem? Similarly, the head of IBM Watson reached out and said, hey, if you're going to be solving this problem and if you can give me the data, we can build the artificial intelligence to understand exactly what needs to be changed and what foods people should eat or not eat based on the data that we are understanding for every disease. And that's how he came and joined. And the third person who reached out to me actually came from the Craig Venter's lab, who is the father of genomics. And he says, look, we realize the genes are really not your destiny. It is the gene expression. And I think what you're doing with the technology that you have from the Los Alamos National Lab and your AI person, I'm going to come and help you solve this problem by helping you analyze the gene expression. And suddenly, we had this amazing team that we had assembled. And the next thing that happened was the venture capitalists start calling me and say, Naveen, what are you working on? Why are all these people quitting and joining you? And I explained to them that I'm working on something that will make the chronic disease completely obsolete. And suddenly everyone wanted to invest in the company. And the more you tell them that you're really not looking for the money at this point, it's like raising a red flag in front of the bull. They all charge and they want to give you more money than you want at any valuation that you want. And that's actually what happened. Suddenly we had all the venture capitalists wanting to invest in the company. The team that was assembled, all that happened because we had this moonshot idea. We had this audacious idea that chronic disease can be prevented and reversed. And just now imagine, if you were in my shoes, you will do exactly the same thing. Applied every single principle that we learned by understanding the symptom versus root cause, by actually asking the right questions, and by having the mindset of abundance, you're able to create this amazing company that is now on track to help billions of people live a healthier life. Now, we have analyzed over 100,000 people last year alone. And what we are finding is there is not a day goes by when people are not emailing it to us and telling us that their depressive symptoms are completely gone. They no longer have acne. They no longer are suffering from many of the autoimmune diseases, whether it's Hashimoto disease or it's a rheumatoid arthritis. People are telling us they used to have a cancer and now the cancer symptoms are completely gone. And I really don't know how many of these things are simply anecdotes versus actually we are solving the problem, but it gives me hope that as we are understanding the root causes of the problem, we are now doing the efficacy trials, the double-blind clinical trials to actually prove that understanding what is causing the diseases and using a food as a medicine, we will be able to prevent and reverse these chronic diseases. So we are now working with the likes of Mayo Clinic to understand the obesity, insomnia. We are working with other institutes around type 2 diabetes, autoimmune diseases. Now we are able to identify oral cancer with 91% accuracy just by looking at your oral microbiome. Imagine, that thing would have never been possible until someone like us who had no background in science or no background in being a doctor were able to challenge the status quo and saying, what if it is possible to understand these chronic diseases? Now, just because of that reason, today we are at a point we not only understand what is causing various types of cancer, we really believe one day, within a decade, not only will we be able to wipe out cancer, I really believe in the next 10 years, we will be able to prevent most chronic diseases, if not all. And the people who are suffering from chronic diseases, I really believe the food can be the medicine. We will be able to reverse these diseases. All that happens because we refuse to live by the status quo. We refuse to let a medical industrial complex simply keep the people sick, because we realize these companies, whether it's a pharmaceutical companies or hospitals, they simply make money when people are sick. And we wanted to change the paradigm by creating a business that keeps the people healthy. And our business is to essentially generate or create a company whose purpose is to prevent the diseases rather than simply suppressing the symptom of the disease and not cure the disease. And I hope every one of you who is listening to this will find this amazing moonshot of your own and work through the same principles that I apply to disrupt healthcare to achieve your own moonshot. And I wish you nothing but a great success in achieving your moonshot. And if you have any questions of any kind, share them with your tribe, because your tribe may be your best group who is all going through the same journey as you, and they'll be able to help you achieve your moonshot. And every one of us that succeeds is going to help millions, if not billions of people live a better life. And that's the life worth living. And that's the reason you are on this quest. That's the reason every one of your tribe member is on the same quest. So use them and come together and cheer for everyone's success, because it doesn't matter whether you succeed or they succeed. We all as humanity are going to benefit from it. So I hope you as a tribe is going to not only achieve your own moonshot individually, but it's going to help everyone else achieve their own moonshot. Here's a task for you. Please review all the learnings of the week. Watch any episode that you may have missed. Go back and start thinking about your moonshot and start to apply every one of the things we have discussed so far. And don't forget to share this conversation with your tribe. More than anything else, please ask for help with your tribe, because they want you to succeed, because when you succeed, their life gets better. So your job is to help everyone else achieve their moonshot, and when you ask for help, everyone else is going to help you achieve your moonshot. What a great week it has been sharing this quest with you. I am super excited about you finding your moonshot and establishing the right mindset of abundance. Next week, we're going to discuss the tools you need to kickstart your own moonshot. In the meantime, keep dreaming and shoot for the moon.